Okay, so for the lesson of composition of functions, we already started this lesson. I believe we got, for third period, we finished C for f of x, okay? If you would like to review the lesson videos, you can. They're uploaded to the Google Classroom. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started for composition of functions. Remember, a composition is just made up of multiple composition or functions within each other. And on your homework, I wasn't quite sure how I was going to give this to you, so if you printed off the PDF version, you can still do these problems, that's fine, but they're not going to be part of the graded homework. Okay, I eliminated these from your assignment that you're going to have today. But if you printed off the PDF, that's fine. It's more practice and that'll be great. But I'm still going to go over how to write it and how to understand how to find g of f of negative 6. So it's going to be based similarly to the lesson we have already talked about last week when we were graphing and finding certain parts of the graph. So in this case, we need to first start by reading this out correctly. Remember, when it's an open circle, it's not multiplication, but it really means it's a composition of two functions. And that's g of f of negative 6. So when we do that, we would start off with g of f of negative 6, and that f of negative 6 would be on the inside. Alright, before we move on, this f of negative 6 we can actually simplify because remember, f of x equals y. We know what x is, so therefore we can find y because it would just be an ordered pair on our function here. So, and when I say that, I mean if x is negative 6, we're just looking for what that y value is. And we did that before last week. So if I look at negative 6, I'm at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's this solid point right here, so we can include that value. And that is going to end up being negative 6, positive 1. So if I simplify, remember f of x equals y. If we simplify f of negative 6, that's just going to give us 1. So now we need to find g of 1. So we're not going to be looking at f of x function. We're going to be looking at the g of x graph. Now with the g of x graph, I do want to show you something kind of weird on this one. Okay, if I look for g of positive 1 and I go up here, that point isn't quite on the lines, the grid. So we wouldn't say that this was 1, 2. We could say it's about 1 and 1.75. Now if a question like this is on a quiz or a test, okay, I'm not going to mark you wrong if you put 2. Just know that it isn't quite on the graph right there, and I'm trying to get my work lined up to where it was. Okay, g of 1 would just give us 1.75, so that's an approximate for that one. So let's go ahead and take a look at b. b starts off with f of x, but I know it's going to end up, so it's going to end up starting off with f of g of 3. Okay, so we're going to have g of 3. Whoops, that doesn't need to be there, that needs to be in red. So I'm going to go ahead and get my red out. Okay, so we're going to end up with f of g of 3. So my first step is to go ahead and simplify what I do know, which is g of 3. So I'm going to go ahead and go over here to where x is 3, 1, 2, 3. I'm going to go up. That ordered pair is just 3, 1. Okay, so my y value is 1, so g of 3 just simplifies down to 1. And I can rewrite that as f of 1. So now I'm going to go ahead and find on my f of x function where f of x is where x is 1 and find where the y value is, which this happens to be 1, positive 3. So my end answer on this one is just going to end up being positive 3, and it's one solution. All right. Let's go ahead and take a look at f of 3 times g of negative 2. So they threw in a little operation right there. The 3 is being multiplied by the g. So writing this out, that is just going to be f of, I'm going to leave some space on the inside there, 3 times g of negative 2. First thing I'm going to simplify is my g of negative 2 because that's just a value. So I'm going to go over to negative 2, 1, 2. Where does it meet up with my function? Down here. So my ordered pair is negative 2, negative 2. Our y value is negative 2. So this would just end up being, I'm going to go to black because it's easier. F of 3 times negative 2. Simplify the inside of the parentheses first because remember this is an operation. 3 times negative 2 is going to give me negative 6. So I just need to find f of negative 6. So I need to go back over to this function. I'll go over to negative 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which was a point we found earlier. So negative 6, 1 would be our answer. And there we go. So that's when we're talking about graphs. You just have to find and simplify different smaller f of 1, or I'm sorry, f of negative 6, g of 3, g of negative 2 before you move on. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started here. If you're in 4th period, I think this is where we left off, or it might be further down, but we're going to go ahead and start talking about this one. I want to move it over just a little bit. All right. Okay, so looking at this, we're going to start off with, I'm going to identify f of x. These are all my values for the function of x. These are all my values for the function of g. So 2 different equations going on. Now I'm going to need to rewrite my functions here. So I have f of g of negative 3. So f of g of negative 3. Negative 3 becomes our x value. Okay, now you know what to do based off of this. So let's simplify g of negative 3 first. Find that negative 3 point. Okay, my y value is 1. So we would just end up with f of 1. Okay, now remember, if I had a weird number, like say if I had, try to find f of, let's say 5. So f of 5. I would look over here and I would look at all of the x values, and if I cannot find f of 5, this is actually going to be does not exist or no solution. Okay, but that's some cases are going to happen that way. All right, so let's go back over here. Little sidetrack thought. Okay, f of 1, so that just means f of x equals 1. What's the y value? It's going to end up being negative 1. Okay, so looking at b, we need to go ahead and rewrite this as a composition of functions. So I need to start off with g. G is g of f of negative 2. Notice how I always start off by saying it out loud. It helps me write it down. So the first thing that I need to identify is f of negative 2. So f of negative 2, I'm going to go over here, wherever I have negative 2. I'm looking for the y value, which just happens to be 3. So then I'm going to have g of 3. So I'm going to go over to the g function to find the x values where it equals 3, and my y value is positive 1. And you're all done. Okay, so that concludes composition of functions when we're looking at ordered pairs. But let's go ahead and take a look at the last example, and I need to move this up, is talking about function notation as an equation. So whenever we're looking at this, we can say, okay, P of N is going to equal the total price, or the price of all of the meals. Okay, so that's going to be the total price. Now, when we're looking at just N is going to equal meals. So if it affects the inside, it's going to be affecting the meals. If it's affecting all of P of N, that's going to affect the total price of the meal. All right, so when we're looking at this, P of N minus 2, that minus 2 isn't going to affect the overall price. In the end, it will. I'll show you how. N represents pies. So I'm sorry, not pies. N represents meals. So that means we're going to have 2 less meals for the price. So if I got 5 meals, 5 minus 2 would give me 3. I'm paying for 3 meals. So if I got 10 meals, 10 minus 2 is 8. So I'm only paying for 8 meals. So think about what that really means in real life. I only have to pay for 8 meals, but I got 10. That means I'm going to end up with 2 free meals. All right, so for the next problem, we're going to multiply the total cost. So basically what's happening is we're multiplying the total cost by 100%, which is my total cost, but I'm also multiplying it by 0.2, which if I were to change this over to a percent, I'm really paying 120% of my original meal. Gosh, that's a lot of money. I wonder what that 20% really is. And if I was in class, I would ask you guys. And somebody would tell me, well, you always pay 20% extra, and that's going to be for the tip for the server. Okay, so that means you're paying 20% tip on top of paying for your meal. All right, so that's what that means. So looking at C is P of N minus 3. So that's a little different than A, because A was N minus 2 and we got 2 free meals out of the deal. But what happens with C is we're going to take our total price, say if it's $20, and we're going to subtract 3. So if we have 20 minus 3, that's just going to give us $17. Okay, that's interesting. What if my meal was only $5 and I subtracted 3? Well, then it would only be $2. What are we really subtracting? Well, on this one, this just means that you might have a discount or a coupon for $3 off the total price. Okay, I hope this helps out. I want you to think creatively when you're looking at homework, because I know some of them are a little tricky. In fact, let me pull that up. I'm going to pause this real quick and find a homework question that I know you might have questions on. Let's see. All right, so on the homework, on the interpreting the notation page, number 4 is a little tricky, and I just want to go over something really quick with you guys. Based off of what we said as far as S of R represents, and it says it right here. So the surface area of the sphere is a function of the radius. R is represented by surface area, so we know that S of R equals the total surface area. Okay, and R is just represented by the radius. So if you think about what we said as far as if it's affecting the radius, it's going to be on the inside, and if it's affecting the whole surface area, it's going to be affecting S of R. So let's take a look at B. The surface area of a sphere increased by 5%. So if we're increasing the surface area, that's really just going to be affecting S of R, the whole thing. And since we're increasing by 5%, that's going to be 5% on top of our 100% that we're doing. So that would just end up being 1.05 times our surface area. So B would be our first answer. I would love to see what you guys come up with. Okay, do the best you can, and we will talk about it on Friday morning. If you have any super amazing questions that you can't wait until Friday morning for help, then you can go ahead and go, well, I say Friday morning, I apologize, Friday during class. We will go over these problems. Now, this assignment is going to be due on Friday. Do the best you can. I am going to have tutoring Thursday morning and Thursday afternoon. Just remember, Thursday afternoon is a sign up, so one-on-one tutoring. So please make sure you sign up, and I will not allow you into the tutoring session unless your name's on that sign in. Okay? Do the best you can. I know some of these word problems are going to be a little tricky, but remember, you're getting half the credit just by writing it out, okay? And remember to turn in your assignment prior to class on Friday in order to get credit, okay? Otherwise, it'll be counted. It will be counted as late, okay? All right, do the best you can, guys. Bye.